Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. Welcome to Tech TV for today, Friday, May 1st, episode 25, 5 full weeks of Tech TV. First of all, happy Friday to you and happy May to you. Hopefully our April showers and shelter at home will lead to some May flowers and we'll have a better May here. I know for some of you, you're probably exploring a little bit, getting out a bit. Enjoy it, but don't be silly. Right? Keep social distancing, keep doing what you need to do to stay healthy, because ultimately that's the goal here. But anyway, I'm looking forward to the weekend. I'm going to try to get some bike riding in and walking and just enjoying the sun here in South Florida. But we have a great show for you to get you through Friday today. We've got a couple of great segments lined up. I think you'll enjoy it. We have some really good stuff, one old, some newer stuff. So let's going to jump right into it. Before we do, though, just a reminder, you can follow along on chat at TechStrong.tv or on our community Slack channel, right, at TechStrongTV.slack.com. Get an invite for it at the TechStrong.tv site. Got a bunch lined up. I wanted to really... our first segment is something a guy named David Waldrop, whose company has developed something called doihaveit.net. It's a really interesting way, and it's good, how the community is chipping in here and trying to help with this COVID situation. We'll get into that. And then I also have a really great interview with my friend Jason McGee. Jason's VP CTO IBM Cloud. And Jason's going to talk to us about OpenShift 4x on the IBM Cloud and what that means, as well as just kind of what's new and exciting with IBM Cloud. And, of course, how COVID and the corona is affecting internally IBM, as well as how they're working with their customers. And then from the something old, I'm going to go back, not too old, just to this past RSA conference. I did an interview with my friend James Wickett, James started the Rugged DevOps movement. James is one of the leaders of the Austin DevOps community, which I think is probably one of the strongest in the world. And James is with Casey Rosenthal, the CEO and founder of the company James is with now called Verica, along with Aaron Reinhardt, another friend of mine. And Verica is kind of bringing chaos engineering to DevSecOps. Great young company. If you haven't heard of them, I wanted to put this video up there to have you guys check them out. And then after that, we'll have some news. We'll turn things over to Charlene O'Hanlon. Then over, of course, to Mitchell Ashley at the Analyst Corner, who has both a great interview as well as the results of this week's Flash poll. And that should be interesting. Do you find yourself more productive from working from home? Looking forward to seeing that one. But for now, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Tech is strong. We may be working from home, but tech goes on. Tech will continue to collaborate. Tech will continue to communicate. Tech is strong. Join us for TechStrong Con, June 4th, 12 hours strong, Tech Strong. Featuring John Bacha-Galupe Willis, Shannon Leitz, William Hurley, Jasmine James, Kat Swatell, Cornelia Davis, James Wickett, Courtney Kissler, Damon Edwards. Live Q&A with speakers, exhibit halls, and more. Free, but register before spots fill at techstrongcon.com.
Hey everyone. Okay, as I mentioned, our first interview today is with Mr. David Waldrop, the founder of the Illumina Consulting Group, ICG. The folks at Illumina are a software development shop. They do a lot of work, federal government kind of work. Well, they've created a portal. I call it a portal. It's a website called doihaveit.net. And it's a great site that both collects people's survey responses as to what type of symptoms they're having, and also based upon your locality will give you what the CDC's recommended medical advice is for your locality given the symptoms you have. So it's a pretty cool little website there. It also gives you localized CDC information for your county and zip code. in terms of how many people there are reported positive and deaths in the area and so forth. Some really good information. So let's go to David Waldrop from Illumina, who is going to talk to us about doihaveit.net.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for this session on TechStrong TV. My guest right now is David Waldrop. David's going to tell you about his company. He's going to tell you about something they've built that I find extraordinary and I want to share with you. But let me first introduce David and we'll get some of this background out of the way. David, welcome.
Hi, Alan. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm great. Oh, it's my pleasure to have you on, David. So, David, rather than mangling your company and the background, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, to share with our audience a little bit about you and your company a little bit.
Oh, sure. My name is David Waldrop, and I'm the CEO and founder of Illumina Consulting Group, or ICG. What my company does is we specialize in real-time analytics. We have a platform called Lux, as in the measure of illumination. And what we're going to focus on today is something we built in response to the COVID-19 pandemic that we call Do I Have It?
Wow. We're okay, Do I Have It? D-I-H-I. Now, sometimes I'm a little slow on the uptake, David. It took me until you said that to grab that. Okay. We're going to jump into that in just a second. I wanted to just mention, and if you don't mind talking about it just a moment, that what you're about to show us and what we're about to talk about is what I found really, really unique about it was that this is built on GitLab. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. We are a full GitLab software development shop, and we are helping, we like to think, promote some innovative practices into our government customer base. It's mostly the DoD and national security realm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, GitLab is what we use from beginning to end.
Fantastic. How long have you been using GitLab?
I think we formally cut over about 7 or 8 months ago, so not so long.
Really? And how's the experience been?
It's been fantastic, and you know, if I could elaborate just a little bit.
Sure.
Mark Kriz is a guy who I know, and he left Cloudera and he went over to GitLab, and him and I know each other pretty well. We work closely together, and he kept telling me, I got to look at this, and you know, that's something my development team uses to go and build software. I don't really know the internals of it, you know, at great detail. But finally, I set up a meeting with Mark and his systems engineer, and they came over and they briefed, you know, my core development team. And I was very surprised that like 3 of them called me, you know, independent of each other, and said, hey, we really want to do that GitLab thing. And so I said, okay, well, let's do it. If you guys say it's good, let's do it. And so we cut over, and you know, everything has been perfect. There's a couple of things that we haven't gotten to more on our side with where we had, you know, kind of customized the, I think the Jira job ticket system. We haven't quite gotten that over there. But right now, my guys, you know, just rave about the merge request processing that we do, which has increased the quality of our code. They rave about the web ability. I mean, the way my team works is we're a small team, so we matrix across customer demonstrations about working on our product and you know, kind of these sales process things that I chase down sometimes. And so they love the ability to kind of, wherever they're at, get on a web browser, make a change, and it's as if they're there. And that's probably the most, I don't know, responded to feature that I hear from my team. Is just the rapidity and the speed with which they can do stuff.
Well, that makes it easy. I mean, look, we covered GitLab obviously quite a bit over here at MediaOps, which is, you know, my parent company that all this runs through. And, you know, it's amazing. I mean, people are using the GitLab themselves use it to do their marketing planning and everything else on the product. So it's pretty amazing. But if you don't mind, let's focus in now on this. Do I have it? D-he. And let's first start with, because this is more of a video interview, it's not a screen share. Let's give people a URL though where they can go check this out while they're watching this.
Yeah, it's really easy. You type in doihaveit.net and you should be there. And we need everybody, in the world to be, kind of going to Do I Have It and offering their symptoms up to their local public safety and response organizations.
So give us a little background here. What made you guys do this?
Well, so what happened is the COVID-19 began, and we were just now starting to figure out that it's not so safe to go outside. And, this was before the government and everybody started, shutting down and sheltering in places. And I had done some work in the past in public safety, and I started asking myself two questions, and I hope you find the humor in one of them. One of them was, what am I going to do if I'm stuck inside this house for a month? I'm going to go crazy. So I need something to work on.
Which is why we have TechStrong TV, David. It was the same thing here. I didn't know what else to do. I usually go to conferences around the world, interviewing and broadcasting. So this is my outlet to not go out of my mind.
Hey, I'm being 100% honest with you. That was one of the thoughts. The second one was, I watched what was happening, and all the numbers and the metrics were coming out were what I would call secondary data. And the notion is that, the local hospital in my neighborhood is called Suburban Hospital, and CDC has implemented a process where all medical care facilities are obliged to, if they treat a COVID patient, to fill out a form and send it to the CDC. Mm-hmm. So that this past work I've done in public safety said, well, hey, what does that do for the guy at my local hospital? I mean, he's the guy who had to fill out the paper and send it to CDC and said, I got 3 COVID patients in here, and now CDC is going to send him a piece of paper and says, hey, hospital administrator, you've got 3 COVID patients. And he's like,
yeah, I know, I just filled it out.
So we started thinking like, well, how can we help with what we do is we build software. That's what my company does. How can we help with that? And what we came up with was this idea of what is the missing ingredient here? Well, it's information. It's primary data about the spread and the prevalence of this thing called COVID. Well, who's got that primary data? Where does it come from, and how can I get it? That's kind of what we do in our day job with the government. So it's really, very pragmatic and very straightforward. It's, well, who's got it? It's every person on the planet that sniffles and has, fevers and shortness of breath. And how do you get it from them? Well, let's ask them and see if they'll give it to you. Why should they give it to you? You may ask me. Well, you're a fairly healthy guy. I'd like to think I'm a fairly healthy guy. If I get COVID, I probably will get it, by the way. I hope it's a couple doses of NyQuil in a couple of days and I'm back on my feet and it's good. The reason I should take the test and volunteer my primary data and make it available to these public safety organizations like the Suburban Hospital is because I've got an 88-year-old mother-in-law that lives 4 houses down from me. And when she gets COVID, and she probably is, and she shows up at Suburban Hospital, I want there to be a bed for her to get in. I want there to be a doctor that's available to take care of her. And if she needs a ventilator, I want her to have a ventilator. So I think the American public wants an outlet to contribute to this thing in some meaningful way, and volunteering their information about their symptoms is one way that we can get in front of the testing, so you don't have to go anywhere to get tested, and you don't have to go to see a doctor. And in some cases, you can get some advice that is localized in nature. I know I'm on a long riff here.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm loving it.
But the situation is that I lost my train of thought there.
All right, let me hop in for a sec. Let me hop in then if I can. So I love it, first of all, and God bless you for doing this, honestly. Let's back up just a minute now. So who should fill this out? Everyone, even if they don't have symptoms? Everyone, even if they haven't been formally tested? Who should fill out? It's a 15-question survey, I believe, that you take. Yep.
Who should fill it out is anybody that feels like they have a symptom, right? If you feel like you've got a little bit of something going on, you should go fill this out. And my point is, we tried to think and build in incentive for the individual taking the test, in addition to contributing, to the community, their community. They're not contributing to CDC, they're contributing to their local response organizations. And the other kind of value we tried to build in there was, I think people want to be told, they want an opportunity to say, hey, here's what I'm feeling. Does this amount to anything? And we try to answer that question. And the other thing they want is, okay, here's what I'm feeling. What am I supposed to do? And that's a hard question to answer. So right now, the CDC guidance for everybody in the US is, if you have any symptoms of COVID, call your doctor. However, that advice is not what they want done in Washington, California, Chicago, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Atlanta, Georgia, and probably New Orleans, right? Because those places are inundated with COVID, and the CDC guidance is not like peanut butter. It doesn't apply equally to everybody in the nation. Rather, if you're young and healthy and you're in New York, they're going to tell you to take NyQuil and, let me know if your symptoms get worse, then engage the medical facilities. So we've got all that capability, kind of built in, trying to give some sense of normalcy to the person taking the test. But the real value proposition is the use by these public safety and response organizations, Alan. And the reason I say public safety and response, for sure, the County Emergency Operations Center could benefit from knowing, how many people have COVID in their area, because they might want to engage the state for more resources. That's what we're trying to do, is anticipate what's coming down the pike, not report on yesterday's news. But that is really kind of what we're doing, is we're trying to anticipate forward what is going. The response organizations, an example of that is in small town USA. Pretend that there's a funeral parlor there, a father and son funeral parlor. It's a little small town in middle of nowhere, United States, and these guys handle 2 deaths a week, on average, something like that. However, there's a nursing facility home in that community as well, and COVID comes sweeping through there, and now there's 10, 12 deaths a week here for 3 or 4 weeks. What's that guy going to do? How's he going to know, that this is coming his way before, before he's overwhelmed?
Yeah, I agree. Couple of things. First of all, how is the advice? And let's be clear, no one's making claims this is artificial intelligence or that there's some doctor behind the black curtain doling out medical advice. But how is the regionalized or localized advice ascertained to give to someone?
Yeah, so it's a in the bowels technical question. What we're able to do is look at those symptoms that are answered in the question, and then kind of process them and transform them into essentially a likelihood to need medical attention in the next week kind of category. And then, so if you're in the, kind of mild category and you're in New York, well, our advice to you is going to be, hey, you should, kind of keep close eye on your symptoms, use over-the-counter medications. And, if you don't think you can cope and handle your symptoms, then you should engage your medical practitioner in some way. However, if you're in I'm going to say Utah, which I don't think there's much COVID out there right now, and you're in the mild conditions to be compliant with CDC guidelines, we say, nope, you've got mild symptoms, you should call your doctor, because that's what CDC says to do.
Great.
And also, we built this technology, I think, under 2 premises that are important. The first is that we don't know anything about COVID, right? We're learning stuff. Just yesterday, CDC announced a whole bunch of new
6 new symptoms, yeah, that we've heard about before, but they never made it to the official. Things like loss of taste and stuff, no loss of taste and smell, some other stuff.
So the technology underlying what controls the questions that are asked and all that processing I said is a Google Sheet. So tonight I'm going to go, add some new rows and some new rows, and I'm going to change the questions that are going to be delivered. And that's on the survey side. The other piece of that is what you just asked me about, and that's on the kind of, I don't want to call it advice, we call it a summary report because we're not rendering any medical advice here. Mm-hmm. But on that summary report, what we recognize is that also is pliable and flexible, and we should embrace change. Because when a local jurisdiction, when a wave of COVID sweeps in or an outbreak happens, for sure that jurisdiction's resources are going to get taxed. And that taxing of those resources is going to change the advice that they render or the guidance that they want to happen. You're not going to be able to see everybody, you're not going to be able to see the 25-year-old, kind of CrossFit guy when he has a fever. You're going to have to save your resources for, the 75-year-old, obese guy with the heart condition because he's going to get hammered hard with this COVID thing and the other guy's not. So we've kind of got both sides of that equation. On the input side, as we learn more, we're dynamic and we can change this. And on the kind of guidance side, we can respect it down to the zip code level, which is the finest grain location information we collect.
Excellent. So we're running a little low on time. I wanted to bring up one other aspect to it. So when I pulled up the site, before joining in our interview, I was pretty amazed. I mean, it obviously picked up that I was in Palm Beach County, Florida, and it gave me a dashboard, right, of looks like rate of infection, and then a whole bunch of numbers, how many people have it, people died, percentage of population, good metrics. Are you pulling that from your own table of it, or from the federal government's CDC or whatever?
Yeah, so Alan, we just launched Do I Have It in Purcellville, Virginia about a week ago, and they're just now amping up the kind of the PR campaign to get folks out to go and take it. So the truth of the matter is right now, if I were to show you Do I Have It data for Palm Beach County, you wouldn't see much data because not many people have taken it. So what I am using there is I'm using the same CDC numbers that we have. What's different about it is we've run that through our Lux platform, the core product that my company builds, and we've enriched and enhanced that data and correlated it with things like county population levels. That's how you get the infection and deaths per 1,000 people in that county. And so we've enhanced that data as the short version using our Lux, our product.
That's fantastic. What a great, it's fascinating, number one. What a great story, what a great use of technology, contributing in any way you can to this public health crisis, right? I also just find it absolutely amazing that you built this on GitLab and how it's functioning and everything else in there. I mean, if they ever have a hackathon award, and they make me the judge, you win, hands down. But that being said, I mean, kudos to you and the team here. This is just, this is that kind of we're in this together spirit that we need to try to get as much information, because right now, you're right, one of our biggest enemies is a lack of information here, and pulling it all in, and as you said, the peanut butter is not spread evenly, and neither are the responses from state to state, locality to locality. So this kind of thing does a world of good. I don't even know what else to say, David, other than that I'm flabbergasted, blown away. Really, really happy to see you do this. We'll keep our eye on it. For those who may have missed the URL earlier in the interview, it's doihaveit.net.
Correct.
Right.
And if you go to doihaveit.net, take a moment, take the survey. And obviously not if you're feeling healthy and you don't have any symptoms, though that's a whole nother story about people who are asymptomatic and may be carrying it, but whatever it is. David, thank you very much. You know what, I'd love to have you on maybe in a couple of weeks and see how this thing has progressed.
Absolutely.
Great story.
We'd love to be on, Alan. And then just, I want to make sure I mention 2 points. One is that, we are doing this, ICG is doing this as a public service. We're not trying to monetize anything. It is purely anonymous. I mean, I know there's some other guys out there doing it. Some of those other big companies that are doing it, they're in the business of taking your data and selling it as frequently and as often as they can. That's not what we do. And your point about, kind of we're all in this together is why we built this. We tried to figure out a way where, the broad public and, the response organizations that serve that public can work together effectively and efficiently. And this is maybe the beginning of something that allows that to happen.
Good work, man. God's work. David, thanks for joining us. We'll have you back on here to check in on this in a few weeks. Until then, man, keep it up.
Great
Right,
work.
thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks to GitLab too.
Yeah, no, GitLab, the folks at GitLab, thanks for, just providing this. It shows you what the power of software can do. All righty, this is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. We'll be back soon with our next guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Okay, back here now in the studio. Our next guest, gentleman I've had the pleasure of knowing for a while. He's a fellow at IBM, which, if you don't know what that means, it's actually a very prestigious title there. But he's also VP CTO IBM Cloud, Jason McGee. And Jason's going to talk to us about the recent release of OpenShift 4 on IBM Cloud, as well as what's happening with IBM Cloud through everything the world is going through. So let's head now over to our interview with Jason McGee of IBM Cloud.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on this segment. Our guest is Jason McGee from IBM Cloud. Jason, welcome.
Hey, good to be here again.
Always a pleasure to have you, Jason. Rather than mess up titles and everything, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Sure. I'm an IBM fellow, and I'm the VP and CTO for IBM Cloud Platform. So I kind of take care of everything in the container and cloud native space for IBM Cloud.
Fantastic. And, Jason, we were talking a little bit off camera. The Red Hat Virtual Summit is going on. We've been covering it quite a bit. Some great interviews, some nice real announcements over stuff coming out. But I wanted to focus a little bit on the IBM Cloud of all things, which would be good to have you on as a guest for, I imagine. But really what we're seeing is, we're now, a year, maybe a little over a year post Red Hat acquisition in IBM. And we're now starting to see where the OpenShift integration into IBM Cloud is starting to pay dividends, right? We're starting to see some special kind of functionality that maybe you wouldn't get if you weren't on IBM Cloud or, and using. Why don't you illuminate us on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're right. We're actually at, I guess, about month 10. Feels like more than a year, but we're at month 10 since since we closed. And,
Mm-hmm.
and over the last 10 months or so, we've been working on really how to build a first-class experience around OpenShift and RHEL within IBM Public Cloud. As you know from maybe our previous conversations, the IBM has been really committed to Kubernetes for, I don't know, for over 4 years now. And we built our entire public cloud on top of Kubernetes. So like most of our own services run that way. So we have like a lot of experience running Kubernetes environments in production. Last year in the summer, just after the close of the Red Hat acquisition, we launched Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud as a service. So that's kind of, we fully manage the OpenShift environment for you. That was based on 3.11, which was kind of the dominant OpenShift version at that time.
Yeah.
And then last week we announced what I think is a pretty substantial upgrade, which is support for OpenShift 4 as part of our managed service. We were the first major public cloud to offer OpenShift 4 as a service. And that kind of combines all of the great work that the Red Hat team has been doing around evolving OpenShift and making it easier to use and manage with operators, combines that, which maybe we've been talking about this week with Summit going on, with a really compelling management model in IBM Cloud where it's super easy to get going, lots of security capabilities, lots of resiliency and availability built into running that as a service. So you get kind of the best of both.
Absolutely. So before we get into what the distinct advantages of using OpenShift 4 are versus 3.11 or previous versions, I want to talk a little bit about managed Kubernetes in general. A lot of people try to draw the parallels between initial cloud adoption on hypervisors, right, versus Kubernetes-based cloud adoption, if you want to call it a new stack or whatever you want to call that. And one of the things that strikes me was, look, I've always thought Kubernetes was great but hard, right? It wasn't for the weak of will, and so I always felt that a managed Kubernetes service was going to be much more successful than like a non-managed Kubernetes, but also really had no parallel to managed cloud, right? The public cloud, you got on, they gave you you got your hypervisor, you spun up your own session instance, right? And off you went. You really didn't need that management layer as a service. With Kubernetes, I haven't seen numbers, so I can't, and maybe you have numbers. I think the market is voting with their dollars and feet. They prefer a managed service. And maybe it is difficult is one reason why. Why else do you think they would prefer it?
Yeah, I think you're right.
I tossed 4 questions in there.
I'll pick which one I like.
Okay.
I do think you're right that Kubernetes is easier to consume as a service. And I think there's a couple of trends that are leading people towards picking that way of running Kubernetes when they can. One is the complexity angle, right? Kubernetes, look, I think the Kubernetes community has done a lot of work over the last few years to make it easier. But still, it's new ideas and it's new concepts, and there's new technologies you have to understand. And I think a lot of people are just like, I don't want to spend my time on that. I want to spend my time on getting the value out of Kubernetes that it promises. And so if I can offload the burden of running the platform to somebody else, that's attractive to me, right? And so I think people are more successful with a service. I think it lets them stay focused on what they really want to do. And so you see a lot of adoption of as a service versions of Kubernetes. Now, there's been on-prem and other environments, edge environments, where that's harder to accomplish that managed capability. And you see a lot of activity in that space. But I do think it's a good place for people to get started. And some of the data that I've seen on adoption patterns starts to bear that out, that people are really gravitating towards as a service. And in fact, I get asked a lot as a provider of as a service, Kubernetes and OpenShift, hey, I really love the service that we're using from you. Could you just do this for me over here in this other environment, right? Because they like that model.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're seeing it. Um, let's shoot over to Red Hat OpenShift 4. So what if you had to say, well, these are the three big wins from upgrading from, let's say, 3.11 to 4. What do you think the three biggest reasons to upgrade are?
Yeah, I think a few things. First, this is so OpenShift itself we're talking about.
Right.
We can talk later about kind of the IBM cloud angle. For OpenShift itself, I think it's first and foremost, it's operators. So operators, really extend Kubernetes with additional APIs and capabilities to manage things running in Kubernetes. So we're really starting to take the management model of Kubernetes and extend it to databases and to the managing the cluster itself and to adding new capabilities into the environment. So I think operators basically allow Kubernetes to deliver a lot more value to the user because there's a lot of automation that can be built into the environment, right? I think operators is number one. That's probably the biggest one. Number two, closely related, is operator hubs. So like operators have enabled an ecosystem of Kubernetes optimized software to be delivered in a way that's kind of one-click install, fully managed software. And you see all kinds of, Kafka and databases and monitoring systems all starting to deliver through things like the operator hub. So those are two, I think, really big user experience improvements. I think the third one maybe is developer capabilities. OpenShift has done some work to provide a more developer-focused console experience within OpenShift and more developer tools. You saw this week the announcement of things like OpenShift Serverless. All of these are technologies that are really trying to get at the problem that a lot of people talk about with Kubernetes, which is like super powerful, but a little much for the average developer to consume. Isn't there a simpler way for the average developer to deploy an application to Kubernetes? And I think the OpenShift team has done some good work there to try to make those things easier for the average developer.
Absolutely. So now let's jump into so what's the IBM Cloud special sauce on running, OpenShift 4 on the IBM Cloud versus somewhere else?
Yeah, so there's a few things that we focus on. First is user experience. How do we make it as easy as possible to create an OpenShift environment, to manage it, to operate it day 2 and beyond? So I think one of the real advantages that we have is simplicity, right? And we're running over 25,000 Kubernetes clusters now on IBM Cloud. Wow. A really big footprint, lots of users who are able to. I don't think there's actually any quicker way to get going with a Kubernetes environment than to come into IBM Cloud and click a few buttons and you have a fully managed environment. I think the second thing we do is really around security and isolation. IBM Cloud in particular is focused on the enterprise market. We're focused on complex workloads, and we're focused on a lot of regulated industries. And so in those security conscious environments, it's important to be able to build a Kubernetes environment that's isolated from other users on cloud, isolated from other workloads within your enterprise, and that's secure. And we've done a lot of work to make that happen. So for example, we run Kubernetes a little bit differently. When we run OpenShift, we separate like all of the management of Kubernetes, the control plane or the masters that kind of manage the Kubernetes environment. Those are separated from the workers that your applications run on, like physically separated on different machines. The masters are run by us. They're in a different network segment, so you can't get to them. So you have this like very protected, kind of resilient control plane that you can't accidentally mess up, that we can secure and patch and upgrade easily. And that required actually changes in OpenShift. We worked with the Red Hat team and engineered a project called HyperShift, which really allowed us to kind of take the control part of OpenShift and run it on top of Kubernetes, right? And in this architecture. So more resiliency, more security are other kind of big focus areas for us within our service.
Excellent. So was this is a recent announcement, so we don't really have enough customer data to start giving us some, but I'm sure it was tested with customers. What's been the response? Yeah, I figured it probably. What are you hearing from customers with this, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, the response has been good. We've actually been in a public beta around OpenShift 4 since February timeframe. And so we've had thousands and thousands of clusters that have been created and leveraged by our users. I mean, the feedback has been, really positive. I mean, they appreciate the security capabilities. OpenShift 3 to OpenShift 4 is a pretty big change, like for the end user. It's a very different management model. It's a completely different installation model. To make that jump actually takes work. In fact, application migration takes some manual effort as well. And so that juncture between OpenShift 3 and 4 also was a place where a lot of clients kind of stepped back and said, okay, if I'm going to have to make all these changes, maybe I just change the way I consume it entirely. And a lot of them went from DIY, like running OpenShift themselves on infrastructure, into a managed service like Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud. At that point, like 4 became the reason for them to make that switch to a managed service. And we've just gotten great feedback on ease of use, on speed that they've been able to get going. We had the US Open used our service back in the fall, and like in 30 days, they went from running nothing to running the US Open in production on top of OpenShift on IBM Cloud. So like people have been able to do things pretty quickly.
Excellent. All right. So it's kind of the elephant in the room. I got to bring it up. How has the whole COVID thing affected things over at IBM Cloud? I would imagine it's a good time to move to the cloud, right? But what are you guys seeing as a result of what's going on?
Yeah, first and foremost, I've been super impressed with the broader IBM team's kind of resilience and adaptability. I mean, we all went from being in the office to 95% of the company at home in overnight, it seemed. And I think in cloud, for the employees themselves, it's been an adjustment. Of course, I think lots of people are like many people in different companies are adjusting to working at home and taking care of their kids and doing homeschooling and kind of managing the demands. But the flip side is like we've been able to be super productive, and obviously we run a global cloud that's distributed all over the world. So like where you physically are doesn't matter that much. I think for clients, the cloud has been a real benefit in this time frame. Like access to capacity, access to these capabilities has allowed them to keep their businesses growing and moving forward in a way that would have been much more difficult in a traditional IT architecture where you'd have to physically, be in your data centers and doing work. We did a lot of work on the IBM Cloud side to make sure that we had capacity. We increased capacity in our cloud. We increased capacity of many of our services to help our clients make sure they had what they needed to move forward. So it's been a great, experience. Trying time, obviously, but also, good validation of some of the value prop of cloud.
Agreed. So, we're Zoom interviewing all these people. We get a little peek into their house, right? And I'm looking beyond you, Jason. I see an X-wing. I see a Millennium Falcon. Give us a little tour. What do we got back there?
Give us a little tour. What do we got back there?
Yeah, this is my home office / like hobby room where we do all kinds of weird projects. I have a son who's 12, and so over the last month we've built a lot of Legos to keep ourselves.
Those Legos like that?
They're all Legos. Yeah, those are all like Lego projects from COVID. Lego projects from being stuck at home and not in school, and so we've been building those out. I also have my 3D printer.
I saw the 3D printer. I thought you were going to tell me you 3D printed them maybe and painted. Then you would have impressed me.
That would have taken a while.
Yeah, but no, great 3D printer. Good stuff, man. So we've got the Red Hat OpenShift 4.0. What's next on IBM Cloud, you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a tremendous amount happening. I mean, one of the areas we're really focused on right now is the developer experience side of things. Like we've been doing work with Tecton. We've been doing a lot of work in the Knative community, working with our colleagues over in Red Hat as well, and our colleagues over in Google. So I think those are two areas that two technologies that we're starting to spend a lot of time on trying to improve the developer experience around the cloud native space. And then of course, Istio, I think, is the other big area of investment. Obviously IBM co-founded Istio with Google. We have a lot of work that we're trying to do to kind of bring Istio into the forefront for a lot of clients and make it part of the platform a little bit. Today I think Istio is like something you can choose to use if it adds value to you. I want to make it into something that's always there and just part of the platform and leverage more.
Yeah. I have to tell you, my kind of view on it is, so Kubernetes is great. I'm not here to say anything bad about Kubernetes, but for people who think that they can, somehow just build out Kubernetes or do a managed Kubernetes offering and they're good is kind of, that's not the truth. I think Kubernetes becomes a catalyst for moving to things like serverless, things like a microservices-based architecture, right? And that's a key piece. I think once you start moving to microservices-based architecture, and you start worrying about security and these kinds of things, the need for a mesh as part of this stack
Yeah.
is, I mean, it's like, the same way when we were building the LAMP stacks up and you had TCP IP and all these things, you wouldn't, I think eventually what we're going to get to, and I'm sure this is IBM Cloud's going to have to get there as well, is it's not just Kubernetes, it's this Kube stack, right? And part of that stack is there's got to be a mesh built in there. There's got to be, all of these layers, just like we've seen with every other technology stack. And it will be a dominant form. So, the idea of, I think 3 years from now, the fact that we would sit here and say, oh yeah, maybe you need Istio, maybe you need a mesh. People are going to look at you like, well, yeah, that's like building a stack without TCP. I mean,
yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think we're collectively in the industry building a new cloud native platform, which will be like the platform for the next 20 years. And Kubernetes, you're right. Linux and Kubernetes and was the catalyst, the kind of core of that platform. But like, we have to solve visibility and observability. We have to have a mesh. We have to have a developer experience. Like all these other pieces are coming in. And I think the challenge for a lot of customers right now is that there's just a lot of complexity there's a lot of projects with a lot of names and a lot of pieces. And I think you're right. 3 years from now, hopefully we're not talking about all the pieces anymore. Those have all just been integrated into the platform and
just to a stack
capability that you're using in this one stack.
I agree with you. Well, we'll keep an eye on you getting there, and you'll keep us appraised of the progress, I hope, then.
Always.
All right. Hey, Jason, stay well. Stay healthy out there. I hope to see you one day at another conference. I know KubeCon is in August in Amsterdam. I don't know if I'll be there. I'd be surprised if it went on. But I think Boston next winter is, but who knows? Anyway, I hope to see you soon, my friend. All right. Jason McGee from the IBM Public Cloud here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel, and we'll be right back with another guest.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
Okay, folks, our third segment today is one of the something old segments, not too old. It's from RSA. The end of February, so just about 2-3 months ago now, and it features my friend James Wickett. James is the founder of the Rugged DevOps, which really was sort of a precursor to the whole DevSecOps thing. James is a really brilliant guy, but as smart as he is, he's also one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And James is also one of the founders and leaders of the Austin DevOps group, which, for my money, is one of the best communities for DevOps in the world. And I've been all over the world. James and Ernest Mueller and Karthik and some of the other folks there just do a great job. Anyway, James recently joined a company called Verica, and we sat down with James and Verica co-founder Casey Rosenthal. I should mention Aaron Reinhardt's also a co-founder there. Aaron's a friend. And Aaron and Casey did some of the kind of foundational work around chaos engineering, bringing it to DevSecOps. And we spoke about this at RSA. I think you'll find it interesting. Here's James Wickett and Casey Rosenthal from Verica.
This is Digital Anarchist at RSA San Francisco 2020.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel for the Digital Anarchist Network, DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal. We are back here live at the Moscone Center on Broadcast Alley for our continuing coverage of the RSA conference. Happy to be joined by two friends of mine from the DevSecOps space. I'm going to introduce them on my far right. It's a guy who really doesn't need much of an introduction to our DevOps.com audience. We've been relying on him for our security expertise now for going on 6 years. One of the leaders of the Austin DevOps movement and the recent had an Austin DevSecOps Days.
Yep.
My friend James Wickett. James, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Alan, for having me on the show.
Thank you. And then, James brought a friend. He's actually the CEO and founder of Verica.
Yep.
He is headed the Netflix team that really kind of started the chaos engineering movement, if you will. Co-author of the forthcoming O'Reilly book on chaos engineering. It's Casey. And Casey, I'm not going to mess up your last name. So
Rosenthal.
Casey Rosenthal. Nice to see you.
Thanks
The fist bump is big this year here at RSA. We have a lot of Purell over there. We're all good. Anyway, hey guys, welcome.
Thanks for having us on.
So number one, I think this is the first interview we're doing with Verica.
Okay.
So
This is our first one.
this is your first interview.
Yes.
Well, what a bad place to start. No, I'm only kidding. So let's start with this. Casey, since you are the CEO, co-founder, I'm going to let you tell our audience a little bit about Verica.
Okay. So at Verica, we basically build continuous verification platforms. So this is a response to the increasing complexity of systems today. We've got continuous integration that helps us reduce the number of bugs by getting code together faster. We have continuous delivery that helps improve reversibility in software, roll back changes, roll things forward, get things into production faster. The next step in that is continuous verification. When you have these complex systems that are changing all the time, how do you make sure that the system does what you expect it to do? So continuous verification focuses on availability and security posture and makes sure that what you think you have covered, you can actually provide the data to back that up.
Yeah. Fantastic. So you guys are officially launched.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Product available. Now, how much of what you're doing is really kind of based upon some of the work you did at Netflix and around chaos engineering, stuff like that?
Yeah, so a lot of it is based on chaos engineering. So about 5 years ago, I was hired to Netflix. My background's in high availability systems and disaster recovery mostly. So I was hired to manage a couple of teams. One of them was the chaos team, which at the time didn't really have a mandate. It was kind of an idea. And so I went around Netflix and then the industry and said, so what's chaos engineering? And what I usually heard back was, oh, that's when we break stuff in production. And I had root access to Netflix. I was like, I'm pretty sure I could break stuff in production all day long and nobody would thank me, right? That's probably not what...
Not a great thing.
Yeah. So instead we sat down and we explicitly defined a proactive discipline to improve availability. And that caught on. I ended up writing the book on it. I built and managed a team at Netflix for 3 years, ran conferences on it. We've got another bigger book coming out in a couple months. So we kind of launched chaos engineering as a movement, and halfway through my tenure at Netflix there, my co-founder Aaron Reinhardt came to me and said, hey, all that tooling you have to improve availability, we've been using that to improve security as well at United Health Group. And it just clicked. It makes sense. availability and security are two sides of the same coin from a system safety perspective.
Well, availability is one of the cornerstones of security in CIA, right?
But it's often left out in a lot of spots.
Yes, not in the CISSP program,
Well,
mind
that's
you,
right, yeah.
but yeah,
On paper-
availability,
on paper we agree,
right?
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So I guess he left his healthcare position. You left Netflix, and immediately formed Verica, or just kind of?
No, I actually no. I had a kid on the way, and I was in a master's program, so I had to step back a little bit. I paused for about 9-10 months.
Sounds like a TV series, This Is Us or something. But okay, go ahead.
And then when things were settled down a little bit more, Aaron and I were like, all right, we've done this at 2 premier companies. Let's bring that to the rest of the industry. A lot of people forget, Chaos Monkey, the concepts behind chaos engineering. That was launched at Netflix as part of their move from the data center to the cloud. That was initiated by their digital transformation to the cloud, and a lot of enterprises are either starting that or undergoing a similar transformation now. So there's no reason not to take something that worked, and has worked at other companies now, and bring some of those learnings and some of that tech to companies that are facing similar problems.
And I'd say that's a key. One of the things we hear about chaos engineering is sometimes like, well, we're not mature enough for it, we're not ready enough for it. But Netflix actually used that as their mechanism to have maturity in that. And so I feel like that's one of those things that we're seeing as people are making these transformations. Like chaos engineering can be part of that that way.
So that's such a common pitfall.
Yeah.
You see with companies. Oh, that's for the big guys.
Right.
I was taught early on by one of my mentors, if you want to be perceived as a big guy or as a player, you got to act like a player. And acting like a player means doing the things that players do. Oh, looks like we have one of the service dogs here. So this is what happens when you're on live TV. Yeah. Chaos engineering at its best right there. That was interesting. Yeah. So how do we react? We're not going to lose it, but
we're robust.
We're robust. We're rugged.
Yeah.
Hey, partner. Anyway, but no, seriously. So for those companies out there who sometimes say, "Oh, we'll do that when we're bigger," or that's for a player, that's for a more mature company.
This is what helps you make you bigger.
Right. You're mature when you act mature, and acting mature means doing things like this that say, hey, we're rugged, we are resilient. We will, I don't want to get all political. But,
so chaos engineering is a tooling discipline, right? Like it's about building tools that help do something. And that something helps change culture in a way that makes engineering teams operate better.
Right.
It's
all there.
Great.
James, I want to focus on you a little bit. So, look, you are a DevSecOps rock star, right?
Well, I don't know about that, but all right. Well,
I'm telling you, you are.
Okay.
But and you were at a number of great companies.
Yep.
We don't need to rehash that. People can go look at your LinkedIn
He's
or whatever.
He's at a great company now.
But well,
there it is.
Very cool. But so, what made you come over to Verica?
Well, when I kind of look out over the next 3 to 5 years, what I see our industry in, I think there's 2 main movements that I could be completely wrong here, Alan, but I see deception technologies and kind of that grouping of companies, and then I see the chaos engineering and kind of the overlap with security. And so I think those are a really exciting spot to be in, and I believe in the mission of what we're trying to accomplish. And I think you never see anybody in security who can pick up like one of Sidney Decker's things on books on safety or some of the principles of chaos engineering, and light bulbs don't go off. Like I never talk to a security person where they don't make that connection. So I feel like there's a big chance for us to really help people in their day-to-day dealing with security, availability, reliability, those types of problems. And so it's kind of exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I know, Casey, you're CEO. Aaron is co-founder. What's your role, James?
I like a head of research type role there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to switch out in couple minutes, and we're going to have Aaron on as well. And but I want to focus now, Casey, if you can, help our audience. This sounds great to them. They loved the Chaos Monkey stories at Netflix. They understand that, hey, if we're going to grow to resiliency, I guess is the word, we need to do this. How do they engage with you guys?
Oh, well, call us and buy our product.
Call 1-800-VERICA?
Verica.io. So.
But I mean, beyond the website.
Yeah.
Is this package now as sort of a product, as a SaaS thing? Is it a consulting gig? How is it delivered?
So it's a product that we are in the process of rolling out, and that will take some time to get to the point where it's something that you can sign up automatically and kind of just read the installation and download. But it's a product that's built on a premise that has been verified by 40 years of resilience engineering and by the principles behind chaos engineering. So it is a tool that lives on-prem and interacts with pieces of infrastructure to educate the teams that interact with that infrastructure about the vulnerabilities in their own system. So
So when you say it lives on-prem, let's take MediaOps, my company, for instance. I take great pride when people come to our office. Our office has a server closet that was built when the office was designed. Really nice, deep server closet, beautiful lighting, the whole telecom panel. Remember they used to have those things with the wires? You know what we keep in there? Toilet paper and paper towels. That's where I store the toilet paper and keep it in a good place. Not far from the kitchen bathroom, I put it there. Where the hell am I going to keep?
We're just saying on-prem. We mean like in your own cloud environment.
In your DMZ.
In your own DMZ. Okay, got it.
As opposed to
I thought I was going to keep it here and I got to reflect it up to my cloud infrastructure.
Not an
I have nowhere to keep it.
It's not an appliance. It's just software.
You say, James, what a mistake you made.
It's software used. We're working, and just also to kind of hone in too on what Casey said. Like we're working with customers that are doing Kafka and Kubernetes right now. We'll be adding more capabilities as we roll out.
Very cool.
So if you're listening, you have Kafka and Kubernetes, and you're interested in this, we would love to work with you and kind of get.
So they can download it, bang, install it, use it.
Well, it's more like engage with us. We'll work on getting a POC set up with you. But yeah, it's a product you run inside of your.
So it's not quite at that point where you're just going to download. You said
it's not turnkey.
It's not a freemium type model yet, or anything like that. So,
Well, you brought it up. What is the pricing structure?
We're pay for install, and we're early days in our journey, so we're working with customers on that piece. So
keep in mind the company's about a year old. So
no, I get it. It's my job.
Hey, it's great. It's a great question.
Let's next talk about. So the company's a year old, venture backed. I know it was public because I remember seeing the announcement around it. Are you looking for more money at this point, or you've got enough to kind of see you through to your next stages?
We're well
Everyone's
funded.
looking for money, though.
Yeah, we're well funded. We have good product market fit, so we'll probably step on the gas a little bit.
Very cool.
And we're working mostly with large enterprises, like companies that have like the big, large-scale problems that we can kind of hook into, which is another reason why we're going after Kafka and Kubernetes, because those are real pain points that people are experiencing, outages, downtime, system security.
Quite frankly, the problem with Kubernetes is an amazing tool, and certainly as I was talking to Sheng Ling, the CEO of Rancher. Rancher OS. And he used, so I don't want to steal his term, I got to give him credit. He said Kubernetes is the new compute.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It really has been quickly.
Yeah.
But that being said, it is far from easy, and it's far from very mature.
Yeah.
We see a lot of instability issues with Kubernetes.
No, there is, and I'm not here to badmouth or steer anyone away from it.
Yeah, well,
it is the new compute.
Yeah.
But it's still relatively early days there too.
It creates an opportunity to
huge opportunity. Yeah. I agree. If I was in your shoes and I was picking one or two kind of platforms in
Are
this
you applying for a
multiverse.
job? This is
You know, if this gig doesn't work out, I might.
Call me, Alan. Call me. We got a spot for you.
Just look, you need someone to do a little podcasting, some promo work. I'm your man.
Great.
But I got to stay in Boca. But anyway, but no, seriously, it's the right place for you guys to be, and I appreciate it. We are going to wrap up part one of our interview with Verica. We're going to be right back in a moment. We're going to bring in Casey's co-founder, and I'm also going to have Mitchell Ashley, our Accelerated Strategies Group CEO, who's a little bit more technical than me, because in our next session, I want to do a deeper dive into the technology behind it.
okay.
Right on.
Fair enough?
Yep.
All right, sounds good.
James, man,
Okay.
always a
Hey,
pleasure
thanks,
to
Alan.
see you, my
Yep.
friend. Casey,
Yep.
nice meeting you. Hey, this is Alan Schimmel. We're live at RSA Conference. We're here on Broadcast Alley. We're going to be right back in just a minute with part two of our Verica deep dive.
Yeah, there you go. Right on.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed the RSA piece there with James and Casey. Let's give you some quick news articles, and as usual, just a spattering. Go to the sites. There's plenty of great content. We are publishing more content than we ever did right now on DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard. So please go on there. There's a lot more than what I'm just going to tell you about here. But I wanted to highlight one article in Security Boulevard today, and that is the top 5 tactical steps for a new CISO. You know, coming out of this, we might see a lot of new CISOs, and here's 5 things a new CISO should do from a tactical point of view. Over on Container Journal, right, we have a new Kubernetes cloud service from a company called, don't want to mess this one up, Flexential. And it's up on Container Journal. You can read all about that. And then on DevOps.com, we have a DevOps chat, software delivery leadership forum, and DevOps World 2020. This is with CloudBees. It features Mitchell Ashley. Recommend that one. You can also get that on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. And then communicating with management about technical debt. So technical debt just doesn't get enough play, I think, in the whole DevOps conversation. And you know, a lot of times I don't know if management really understands what we mean by technical debt. So this is a good article, and I do recommend that. As I said, not meant to be exhaustive. Lots more news and articles on all 3 sites. Please check them out. But for now, we're going to head over to Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor. Charlene has 2 great interviews lined up today. I'm going to let her tell you all about them. So Charlene, over to you.
Elsa, you're all over the place.
How am I supposed to do anything when she's over here just doing her own thing?
Okay, well, maybe if Dan played more than just one string, we'd all be more on the same page.
Are you out of your mind? Okay, I do the E string. That's my job.
Isn't there an easier way to do this?
I
There
wish.
has to be.
I literally
I
just
don't
suggested
know.
something.
Right?
Nobody ever listens
Oh,
to me, though,
It's
so.
ridiculous every time.
When your team's not on the same page, things can get weird, fast. Don't make your DevOps team live like this.
El tutto tu tempo es finito, Dan.
See? It's like we're not speaking the same language. I'm out.
GitLab is the only single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle, making sure your teams are all on the same page.
Do you know how to play the E string?
I can learn.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Welcome back, everybody, to TechStrong TV. I am Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at Media Ops, and I'm here now with Jonathan Fries. It is Fries, right? Not Fries? Okay, great. Jonathan Fries, Exadel's Vice President of Engineering and Digital Transformation and their DevOps practice. And I'm so happy to have you here on TechStrong TV with me. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So, you know, I've heard that Exadel is doing some great things for the DevOps community during this pandemic, as have a number of companies. But one of the things you guys are doing is a hackathon, right?
Yep, we're having a hackathon. It's actually based on our low-code platform, which is called appri.io. So it's been going on for a couple of weeks, and we have about a week left on it, where we have gone out and we're looking for ideas from people around what, things that can apps and application ideas that can be developed that will help with different aspects of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, some of the preliminary ideas and things that we've seen come in for people are things for, kind of a broad range. Some of them medical, and some have to do with, keeping track of research. And then there's been ideas like, how to help people get out and, take a safe hike somewhere, so on the mental health side versus the physical health side. So
that's great. That's great. I really like that idea. How many would you say on average, how many apps have you, has your organization gotten?
So we don't have the sort of final numbers in, but it'll probably be like in the 50 to 100 range. Hard to say for sure how many, and you sometimes have people that sign up for a hackathon and they start, but then they don't actually submit anything at the end. So, it may be that we have on the lower end of that, if not a lot of people end up submitting because they just don't finish or something, or, on the higher end, if a lot of people do submit. And we certainly have the ability. appri.io is a very scalable platform. So, if a bunch more people decide to participate in the last week, then, there certainly isn't an issue with more than that coming in if we get them.
Okay. All right. So those who are taking part in the hackathon, it's already begun, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then how long does it go?
Until May 6th.
Okay. All right. Great. And besides being able to use your platform, what do the winners of the hackathon get?
Yeah, so the winners of the hackathon, sorry, I have to double check that.
No, that's okay. That's all right.
Apologies. So the first place is $1,000 and an appri.io annual subscription. So you get to use the tool for a year for free. Second place is $500 and also an annual pro subscription, and then third place is $250 and a subscription as well.
Wow,
so
that's nothing to sneeze at. That's great. Great. So have you had participants from mostly the United States or all over the world, or what's been the demographic?
It's pretty worldwide. Appri as a platform definitely has a worldwide footprint, a fair amount of North America and Europe, but a smattering in other places as well. So it's kind of been a pretty typical response. It's used by a lot of dev shops for app development, as well as a low-code platform. It gets used for some prototyping and things like that as well. So
gotcha. Okay.
The shops that tend to use it.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
So you guys are doing some other things also to kind of help the DevOps community. So can we kind of talk a little bit about those?
So, the other things that we have going on the DevOps side, we definitely have some customers that we work with, and we've seen some interesting trends there in terms of, what's happening with them as it relates to the COVID-19 stuff and what's been helpful. So if it's okay, I'll talk about a couple of those trends, and then the DevOps community more broadly, we do have some things going on. The things that we've noticed related to sort of DevOps in general, in terms of projects that we're working on. I mean, one is we've seen sort of like a move to redo and sort of move to like a DevOps, 2.0 or a second revision for companies that already had like a complete cloud native kind of DevOps. Like they are as there's some like mergers and acquisitionings and things happening. Like they have to bring a bunch of other things together, and so they need to sort of expand what they have and really redefine. So even if they were cloud native, like as cloud native existed 4 or 5 years ago, like they're being forced to sort of bring those things up to today, right? To 2020 version of cloud native DevOps. So there's some redefinitioning, redevelopment, replatforming of DevOps is probably the best way to say it. And we've seen a couple projects like that. Another interesting thing is for firmware. So we have clients who have physical products, wearable devices, desktop gardens, and things like that, where those devices have software that runs inside of them, which is called firmware.
Yeah.
And the process of doing DevOps and things like continuous integration and continuous delivery from the firmware developer, through the integration environment and onto the devices themselves. Because it's one thing when everyone on the team they're all sitting together in a room and you can hand the devices around and somebody can go and put new firmware onto that device, that's great, but that can't happen anymore, right? People aren't in offices together. So people took the hardware device home with them. If the person who has the hardware is like, hey, I'm not the person who normally flashes the firmware. Okay, well, how do we automate that whole process of getting the firmware onto a device that's under development and test, which is important because you need your QA people and your beta testers to be able to work with software that has bug fixes and everything else. So that's another kind of interesting trend that's sort of popped up in the last 6 weeks of something that we needed to sort of look at for DevOps. We're working on Exadel is outside of Appri, we're a services company. We do digital transformation and agile software development and DevOps as a practice. And we've been developing a tool called CrossCube. And CrossCube is it brings together Terraform and Kubernetes and all together in sort of one package, and you can deploy a complete environment into, right now we support AWS or Google Cloud or Azure, and it's basically a complete microservices Kubernetes environment that gets deployed from a web UI and into any of those environments, and it's completely the same regardless of which of those environments it gets dropped into. So it gives, for our customers who are really interested in the cross-cloud capability, a way to sort of get very consistent environments very quickly in those environments. And that tool right now, we're working with it with a few customers, and we've been sort of talking to some other people in the DevOps community about what else we might do with it. It's possible that we might open source it eventually, but we'll see where it goes.
Very cool. Very cool. So where do you kind of see your customers then, or your users, in this new kind of work from home paradigm? Do you think that we're actually kind of reaching a point where they've become so comfortable with it that they might not want to go back to the office?
That's a good question. I would say that no, I think a lot of people are ready to go back to the office now. I think we'll see more working from home. I think it's caused a lot of people to, from a DevOps perspective and from an automation perspective, it's caused them to actually solve a bunch of things that they needed to solve anyway for work from home that they didn't have a reason to solve before, but now they did.
Okay.
And now that some of those obstacles are cleared out of the way, I suspect that we'll see working from home on a more frequently, like maybe once a week or twice a week. But there's a lot of people that I talk to who are really itching to go back to an office.
So do you think that's because of the social aspect of it, or do you think it actually just kind of being in an office makes it easier to do certain tasks if you have people right there versus, right there on Slack or something like that?
I think it's mostly social. For the most part, for the customers that I work with, they've gotten to the point where people are pretty effective working from home. So a lot of hey, we have to be in the same place, oh, I need to be in this, having this meeting in the same room in order for it to be effective. This has definitely, dispelled a lot of those myths and sort of, or forced people to do things differently so that was no longer true. At the same time, there's I've seen a number of things, and I've certainly heard it from people too about, the mental fatigue of all the online meetings and things like that. That's just, there's hopefully when safety permits, there's a happy medium where we can get some of the advantage, or all the advantages of working from home, and sometimes get the opportunity to meet and be physically present together and get the advantages of that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've pretty much worked from home for the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. So this was really nothing new for me, but I'm actually more social now because of the fact that everybody else is working from home, and people are reaching out more. I find it's really kind of changed the way we interact with each other, just on a daily basis now too, and work and non-work activities. So I find this is really changing the way we as a society are treating each other and working with each other, and I think we're going to see some long-lasting consequences because from that, but not in obviously in a negative way. I think we're actually kind of coming closer together as we kind of move farther apart, forcibly, obviously. But yeah, it's just really, really interesting times, and I love to hear all the good stories that organizations are, the ways that they're helping not just the DevOps community, but the community at large, in donating their software, their applications, and their time. So you guys should be commended. So good stuff.
Thank you.
So. All right, Jonathan, thanks so much for taking the time and having the conversation with me. Love to hear more about the hackathon. So maybe, maybe in a couple weeks or so, we can get you back on and we can talk about the results of the hackathon.
All right, great. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
All right, great. Well, thanks again. And please stay tuned for more TechStrong TV coming up. We've got lots more on tap, so please stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Welcome back, everybody, to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor over at Media Ops, and having lots of conversations, lots of really good conversations about all things DevOps, security, containers, and you name it, especially in these trying times that we're in. There have been lots of really interesting topics that have come up over the past few weeks, and one that I think we're going to have a really nice conversation about now is the topic of GitOps and its place in this new work from home environment. So with me now is Chandler Hoisington, who is Senior Vice President of Engineering and Product, I believe, at D2IQ. Chandler, welcome to TechStrong TV. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Did I get your title right?
That's right. It's a mouthful. It's a
All
mouthful.
right. Yeah,
Engineering
absolutely.
product. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, great. Thanks. So I understand that GitOps really has a place in the whole DevOps domain, if you will. But when we're talking about developers who are really used to working in environments that are very collaborative and they can communicate with each other by just basically looking over their shoulder and yelling at each other, it seems like now that we're in this work from home paradigm, this new normal, if you will, they just don't really have that opportunity to be as communicative and collaborative. But you're saying that GitOps can actually be the bridge, if you will, the process by which they can stay productive and stay performant. So let's talk a little bit about that. But maybe we should kind of back up a little bit and talk about GitOps and what it is and really what it means to companies.
Yeah, sure. No, I think that's a really good point. I think people are actually still doing a lot of communication, still looking over their shoulder. It's just the way they're looking over their shoulder might be a Slack message or a pull request nowadays, or a comment on a pull request. So it's just a different way of interacting. But yeah, let's GitOps, to answer your question. GitOps it's not necessarily a new thing. It's exactly what the name describes. It's using Git, which is a tool that's been around for a really long time. Yeah. To enable your operations of your clusters and to manage your operations. And I think in a nutshell, essentially what GitOps is a declarative way to push out state releases, new builds, and do it in a declarative way. And we're seeing that new model of saying, I want things to look like this, and like kind of the magic hand wave, and just magic happens behind the scenes as like a new enabler of working with systems and your resources. And GitOps is kind of leveraging all the really cool stuff that's been happening in the community around that. And so that's what GitOps is. I don't know if that's a great definition, but that's the way I think about it. I think it as like the magic that you can do by just committing one commit and then seeing your clusters update or seeing a canary deploy happen or something like that. So.
Okay, all right. So it's safe to say it kind of maybe streamlines operations or makes it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's a new model of working that not only streamlines operations, but unlocks a whole set of tools and solves a whole bunch of problems that I think DevOps engineers like myself have run into over many years. So things like config creep, right? Where your production environment was pristine the day you set it up, and now something's going wrong, and you don't know who went in and changed what and tweaked what, and you have to rebuild the whole environment. But it takes you 2 weeks because a config file might have gotten changed on this node, and this parameter might have gotten tweaked on this node, and it was all something that happened manually, and it wasn't saved back to your Ansible playbooks or whatever, and it's just gotten out of hand. And GitOps is a model of working that aims to solve those problems. And that's a better way to describe it. It's really a model of working, and the tooling behind enables that new model of working.
Okay. All right, great. So I understand the advantages of working this way in kind of the new or the normal, quote unquote, normal working environment, the non-pandemic environment. But how does that change in this environment where we've got people quite literally working everywhere and from any location on any device, and different network speeds, and we're dealing kind of in an environment where there is no conformity or no everything is kind of it's its own universe, if you will. So does that have any impact on GitOps, or does GitOps have any impact on that?
Yeah, no, good question. So I think the problems that GitOps solved, you actually probably would run into these problems regardless of working remote or being in an office. But I think they're compounded now that you can't be in front of people. So for example, if your way of doing a production rollout of some new software to your production systems was to sit in a war room together and have your checklist written out on the whiteboard, Bob's going to update this, Joe's going to make this push, then we're going to roll this database and do this, and that. Like, and then you all just kind of got it done over 24 hours. That becomes a lot more difficult when you guys, like you said, are on unstable connections trying to do a Zoom and the bandwidth is coming in and out and you're turning off your video and, you know, you got kids running around, which you might hear at my house in a second. There's kids running around. And so that makes things a lot more challenging. I would argue this new model, which is really leveraging all the tools to your full disposal. So Slack, Git, you know, and then these new tools that we're using at D2IQ, we actually built a product around this called Dispatch. And, you know, that's leveraging some really cool tools out of Google called Tecton and something that Intuit came up with called Argo CD. And then, you know, we built some of our own tooling around those things to really kind of tie that whole system together. But it's really taking advantage of all the tooling at your disposal and working in these remote environments. So to give you an example of how a deploy to production might look in this new world, you might go on Slack and say, you know, /push as a command, which then goes and makes a commit to Git that something is watching, Argo CD in this case, and say, oh, there's a change that happened in this repo. I'm going to now roll that out to your production environment. And that all happened just from a Slack command. There was no war room. There was no whiteboard checklist. Like everything was just automated behind the scenes. And if you happen to screw something up, you can do /revert. I'm just making this up, but you do /revert and all that rolls back and you're back to the state that you were before with confidence. And I think that's the kind of promise that GitOps is making. And you know, when paired with the right training and education on this topic, you can actually accomplish those kind of aspirational dreams. And that might seem very aspirational to a company that's used to working in kind of the war room style or maybe a more legacy way of deploying and managing production environments. But it's, you know, the jump from there to GitOps is actually not quite as hard as you might think when you can leverage all this new tooling like Dispatch that we built.
So is GitOps kind of like the next iteration of DevOps, or is it kind of a parallel to DevOps?
Yeah, I think it's just a way to describe, you know, how you do deployments. You know, you have like, there's all these terms getting thrown around nowadays, like SecOps and GitOps and Dev. I don't even really understand what it all means. Everyone uses them in different contexts. This specifically is basically leveraging all the new tooling, the cloud native ecosystem, and Git, which is a tried and true tool that we've had for a long time, and using all these new concepts and new paradigms to manage your production environments and really do any kind of rollouts that you need. And it's the new way of doing kind of CI/CD tooling. And like I said, there's a lot of benefits to it, and the ones I mentioned are just a few. I mean, we could go into it for a long time, but that's the really way to think about GitOps. I would say that it's similar to kind of DevOps. The way when I think about DevOps, I think about enabling developers to kind of have their hands in the operations of the code that they wrote a little bit more. And yes, GitOps can definitely help enable that kind of DevOps movement as well.
Okay. All right. Great. So, yeah, you know, circling back to GitOps in kind of this remote working environment. What specifically would you consider some of the benefits of GitOps to be for those folks who are working from home? You know, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say like at the heart of GitOps is the concept that it's declarative. And why that's important, we're seeing that with other tooling like Kubernetes, which enables some of the GitOps tools that we use. We're seeing that be important because of this example I used earlier, where I'm at home in isolation here, you know, in north of Berkeley, and you know the rest of my team might be in Germany and Spain and you know the UK, and I roll out some new software to production, and then go to bed. It's the person that wakes up in the UK doesn't have to know what magic script I wrote that rolled out that new stuff. They can just clearly look in Git and say, oh, Chandler did a commit to roll out some new software at 10 p.m., went to bed, and everything broke. And now I'm here holding the bag. Chandler's sleeping. I can't get him. He turned his phone off. So what do? Well, I'll roll this back. And so it's a very understood way of working, and there's no magic. There's no custom magic that, you know, or custom handoff I have to do to that other person. And I think that's a big advantage to working in kind of this new model. And that's true for a lot of the tooling, not just the GitOps tooling we're using, but that's true for a lot of the tooling I think companies are going to be adopting as they work from home more and really start to get used to this kind of like new way of working.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think as you were talking, I was thinking, well, this seems like something that folks can use even beyond, the state of emergency, if you will. I firmly believe that we're going to have an entire workforce that is going to be a lot more comfortable in their pajamas working these days than in the future than actually going into the office. But well, Chandler, thank you so much for having the conversation with me. Really, really interesting stuff. And, hopefully we'll have another conversation together soon.
Sure. Anytime. Thanks.
All right. Great. Thanks a lot. And everybody, please stick around for more TechStrong TV. Got lots of stuff coming your way, so please stay tuned.
Hey, thanks, Charlene. Those are two great interviews. Interesting story around D2IQ. They've kind of changed their name, obviously, to match more of their mission, and I wish them nothing but good luck. Next, we're going to head over to the Analyst Corner with Mitch. It's Friday, and so Mitchell's going to discuss the results of this week's Flash poll, which were, do you find yourself more productive from working from home? I'm really interested in what the results say there and what Mitchell has to say about it. Mitchell also has a good interview with YL Ventures' Nama Ben Dov. YL Ventures is one of I've known Yov at YL Ventures now for many years. They really were one of the pioneers of breaking out kind of Israeli-based cyber companies, giving them some early seed and venture funding that allowed them to come over here to the U.S. and tap into bigger funds, bigger markets. And the YL folks have been responsible for a number of successful Israeli-based companies. So should be a good interview. But let's send it over to Mitch now, and we'll find out more. Mitchell, take it away.
Well, it's Friday, and that means that we're going to share our poll results for the poll this week that we're hosting on DevOps.com. And thank you to the DevOps.com folks for hosting that. If you recall, we've been doing some questions around working from home and COVID-19. Do you prefer working from home? We had a pretty strong response that people did. And also, what are some of the reasons why you would prefer working from home? Zero commute, one is the biggest one. I think it's 75% actually of the respondents said that. Now this week, we asked this question. Compared to working in an office environment, how would you rate your productivity after a few weeks working from home due to the COVID-19 situation? Again, responses were pretty interesting. Significantly more productive, somewhat more productive. Those two responses were 51%. So just barely over half of the respondents felt like they were more productive working in a home environment. 19% said no difference, the same as an office. Somewhat less productive was 16%, significantly less productive was 14%. So clearly a bias towards that upper end of feeling more productive working from home. So in some ways validates some of the other answers around preferences of working from home. Why would you want to work from home if you felt less productive? So it kind of makes sense that the data is correlated. Now these are individual polls, so we don't know exactly the same people filled out each one. So you can't use it kind of scientifically to make those kind of conclusions. But anecdotally, it makes sense. So it's been a lot of fun hosting this. This is actually part of a research program that we have on ongoing at Accelerated Strategies around not just COVID-19 today, but what does the new normal, or some people would say the next normal, look like? And we're doing some ongoing research. If you're interested in sponsoring some of that, we'd be happy to talk to you. Just reach out to me at mitchell@accelst.com. Also, we launched earlier in the week, we launched a software delivery management research survey. We'd love to have you fill that out. It's not very long. I think it's about 20 questions, takes 7 minutes to fill it out. I've been through it a couple times just as part of building the survey to prepare for the research. It's really looking at how organizations feel that they're doing with understanding the value and measuring the value that they're getting out of their software efforts. When they put money in one end, are they getting results that are making a difference to the business? How do they measure that? And how important is it to them? Where do they think they're on that? Now, there's a lot of activity in this area with value stream management and software delivery management, things like that. That's why it gets so much attention as DevOps scales. Now, next week, definitely join me on Monday, because I'm going to be having a conversation with Sanjay Sharma, Principal Analyst at Accelerated Strategies. And we're going to be talking about some of the reasons we launched this survey and why we picked this area to do some research. And so maybe some of the assumptions going in, and also asking questions like, is COVID-19, how is that going to influence people's results? We didn't design it around that, but the environment that the survey is being filled out, certainly you'd expect it to be influenced by happenings today in our environment, both economic reasons as well as personal reasons. So thank you again for filling out our polls, and we'd love to have you participate in the software delivery management poll. You can get to that either by going to the Accelerated site at accelst.com, or you can also go to acceleratedsurvey.com and get to it from there. So thanks for joining us this week for all of our segments. It's been a lot of fun doing this with you, and I look forward to some really great interviews that I have upcoming next week, as well as the Alan's Corner segments. So be safe, be well, be careful out there.
Hey everyone, Alan Schimmel, CEO, founder of MediaOps here. I want to personally invite you to join us on June 4th for 12 hours strong of TechStrong. TechStrong Con is our conference that we're putting together. You know, the tech industry is so built, and it was such an integral piece of our existence and identity of going to so many conferences, communicating, collaborating, networking, seeing your friends in the industries, your peers. And you know, just because we can't get together in person anymore, we can certainly do it virtually. We've been doing virtual events at MediaOps for 2 years. We think we've got them down. It's, you know, it's a really immersive experience. But what I'm really excited about with TechStrong is, you know, my friend John Willis, my partner in Digital Anarchist, John's put together an amazing lineup of speakers. I think unlike any you've seen at a virtual DevOps, cloud native, DevSecOps, or cybersecurity related conference before. Check it out. Go to techstrongcon.com. Registration, attendance is free, but space is limited. We hope to see you there. It's 12 hours all day, June 4th. TechStrongCon.com. Stay well, stay healthy, stay strong. TechStrong.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Well, today I'm joined by Nama, who is an associate of the investment team at YL Ventures. And she has some really information from a study, some research that has been done for CISOs, but also some information around coronavirus. So Nama, welcome. Good to talk with you.
Happy to be here, Mitchell.
Great. It's an exciting and, of course, very timely topic. Let's start first, though. Would you just tell us a little bit of your background and also the kinds of things that you do at YL Ventures, what kind of a venture company it is?
Absolutely. So once again, happy to be here. Thank you so much for hosting me. I'm an associate at YL Ventures investment team. And at YL Ventures, what we do is invest in Israeli seed stage companies in cybersecurity and only in cybersecurity. Entrepreneurs come to us in the very early stages of ideation and even on the brink of ideation. And we talk with them, learn from them, hear and listen what they have in mind, and try to help them as they work through these processes of very early sort of ideas and product building. After we invest in companies and those cybersecurity companies, we work together on various fronts in order to develop them. Primarily, both our teams in the US and in Israel work hard in business development, so creating and generating relationships, leads, customers, partnerships in a lot of companies across the world, primarily by leveraging our Venture Advisor program, which consists of over 80 CISOs, primarily in the US. These include Fortune 500 companies, extremely high caliber cybersecurity professionals, which are an honor and an absolute delight to work with. We got 13 team members across Tel Aviv and the Bay Area, as well as in the East Coast, including a CISO in residence, which Sunil Yu has joined our team very recently. And this is also one of the very interesting and unique things about Wild Ventures, that we got those very hands-on professionals working with us for a while now. So we also have worked intensely with our portfolio companies on marketing. We got this in-house marketing team, amazing team of professionals, which leverages their unique talent both to do Wild Ventures' marketing, as well as offload some of our portfolio companies' efforts when they're still young and trying to work out their products. And last but not least, a lot of what we do is listen to the industry to learn. We, as a venture capital firm, we have to be very knowledgeable about what we invest in, and we have to be out there helping entrepreneurs, both our own and not even our own. And in order to do that and to be better industry players, we do a lot of research. And for this reason, we initiated the CISO Current Report, in which we go out there to the industry, listen to what it has to say, and provide and deliver value to early stage entrepreneurs, to our portfolio, and to other CISOs as well.
Interesting. It's both a lot of fun and very engaging working with early stage seed companies. So I can appreciate on being on the entrepreneur side of things, the kind of work that you do. And yeah, I'm sure you get to hear a lot of really interesting ideas and really, probably more importantly, some really great people. Tell us a little bit about you kicked off this study. Is the CISO report, is that current report, is that something you've done in the past and this is a next generation or an update to it, or is this a new topic area that you're doing research in this report?
So our latest edition was the 3rd edition of the CISO Current. This is something we kicked off approximately 1 year ago. So right now we're working on the 4th edition of the CISO Current, which is gonna be launched at the end of Q2 2020. And sort of the rationale and idea around this report is that we find ourselves in a very unique position as a VC across both the US and Israel, working together with entrepreneurs and CISOs. We see sort of an overarching view of what the market actually wants, needs, and projects in the upcoming years. And we also see what entrepreneurs find and are interested in and want to build and are thinking of building. And then we thought to ourselves, why not sort of create this bridge between these two worlds, leverage information that we get from CISOs about what the market actually craves and needs, to entrepreneurs who actually have the capability of delivering those needs. At the same time, enabling CISOs also to understand what their peers are doing across the board, which is also incredibly important, as this information doesn't often come across very efficiently. So that is something that we're trying to bridge the gap on, and we're very happy that this project is not only ongoing, but constantly developing and restructuring itself to new challenges and new frontiers, such as what we're going to talk about later, I assume, the COVID-19 situation.
Very much so. Well, let's jump into the findings. What are some of the kind of things that stand out from the research that are in the report? Some really kind of interesting, this is really a big message and what we found, and maybe it's consistent or maybe it's starting to change.
So I think two of the most interesting messages that we weren't expecting, or we weren't necessarily expecting to receive following the results that we got, was the fact that when the rubber meets the road, when it comes to securing code development specifically, and when it comes to sort of the intersection between security and operations and code, is how much process driven it is and how much all of the concerns and challenges, both existing and the ones that will develop in the future, boil down to human-based concerns. And what I mean by that is that a lot of them have to do with collaboration or lack thereof between those teams. A lot of it boils down to not having efficient communication channels because a lot of developers aren't incentivized nor particularly understand security to the extent that security would like them to, nor security understanding development practices as they currently stand in their own companies, thus creating sort of this gap, this constantly needing to be bridged gap between those two teams. A lot of our advisors had various ideas about how to bridge these gaps. So at the end of the day, yes, there are a lot of tooling questions around how efficient existing tools are when it comes to modern securing modern development environments, and in the light of modern development methods. You got all these very complex and constantly modern and changing infrastructures, such as microservices and the adoption of Kubernetes and CI/CD pipelines, and a lot of existing tools, both either SAST or DAST or IASP and RASP, don't really sort of alleviate a lot of the challenges that are created as according to these technologies, nor can they really cater to these new realities of these technologies. So yes,
interesting to that point, Nama, is just from experience, it seems like that technology tools, while they help advance and move things along and help us do our jobs to automate process, they oftentimes don't get to the underlying issues around communication, working together, skill sets, the people part of it. And it sounds like that's a big part that stood out for you in this, is what CISOs are struggling with, is how to really achieve that DevSecOps kind of environment where there is a better integration, partnership, communication, knowledge sharing between security and developers. Does that sound accurate?
Absolutely. And successful companies and entrepreneurs in this space, this is what they manage to crack. Not necessarily sort of very complex algorithmics behind what their product has and is building, but rather, how do you make your products more developer friendly? Are you trying to enforce all sorts of dashboards which security teams like using on your developers, or are you creating a sort of frontier to your product through CLIs? Are you trying to make all sorts of security and code development processes be gated according to a lot of developer methods and actions that they have to take in order to pursue their code development environment? Or are you sitting down with security and with product development and with the R&D and thinking about security from the onset of product development and code development processes? So these are sort of this is just tip of the iceberg of a lot of the pending questions that the industry has.
You said there were a couple of standout items. Was that both of them, or was there another thing that kind of popped out?
Can you say that again, please?
You said that there were a couple of big things that kind of came out of the report. Interesting information. Did you cover both of them, or was there another one that you wanted to talk about?
So primarily along the lines of how these processes are sort of instilled or not instilled in a lot of these code development processes, a lot of security hurdles in these code development processes, but also primarily understanding how to basically form this mutual language. Do we do this by training developers on security practices, or do we say, hey, listen, let's expose all of our developers to security tooling, or expose the security teams to the uses of what developers are doing? For example, if your company is using infrastructure as code environments, for example, HashiCorp's Terraform, which has extensive use in a lot of companies, or CloudFormation, do we use the native security capabilities of these platforms? And if we do, to what extent? So a lot of companies are saying, listen, we need to transition to understand these native capabilities and what we want to take out of this, yes or no. And to what extent we also want to sort of provide more security power and security sort of capabilities to our developers. A lot of questions about who has what roles, and to what extent security should be offloading a lot of these roles to developers and how to do this. So it's a very process related questions and concerns.
Interesting. Were there any surprises or things that the study is telling you that you weren't expecting? Something that might have been, we weren't expecting to learn this, or our CISO community responding in a certain way?
So it's actually quite interesting how a lot of CISOs sort of relate differently to externally facing applications and internal applications. So external applications, apps that they build and code that they develop for their customers, a lot of it is internet facing. A lot of it has data which pertains to customers, even to the extent of having PII or other sensitive information. And a lot of this data and code is regulated. And when it comes to developing such applications and getting that information and data from customers, there's a lot of contractual obligations of how to develop this code and how to handle this data in front of your customers. And this leads to a lot more motivation and incentive from the companies to be very security aware regarding those the development of such code, so externally facing apps. However, when it comes to applications that are developed internally, all sorts of ERP systems or CRM systems which don't leave the corporate network usually, there are no such contractual obligations usually or stipulations. And a lot of this, of course, applications are not internet facing, and it's very harder to hack or get any data leaks from these applications. And as such, CISOs are more concerned, rather than securing this code, of actually its integrity. So making sure that the performance is not tarnished, as well as it having been more efficient to execute, things like that. So I think it's a really interesting point to understand the priorities when it comes to internal apps versus externally facing apps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very interesting. Let's turn, you mentioned that we were going to talk about the COVID situation, COVID-19. What kind of information, guidance, tidbits might be relevant to entrepreneurs that are thinking about COVID?
I think it's very, very important. As a whole, it's always important to listen to what the market has to say and be very humble in your approach when trying to meet the market. This is even more important at times like these, when people are either striving for their livelihood and trying to understand how to both manage and secure the livelihoods of others around them. So having said that, we went out there and asked CISOs, what are you currently experiencing, and what do you think that entrepreneurs should do in light of what you're experiencing? And I think the most important and results that we got here, that 41% of our CISOs said at this point in time, vendors, cybersecurity entrepreneurs, in all stages, we want to see them doing goodwill gestures for the industry, for people around them. It's during these kinds of times that a lot of the true faces, a lot of companies come out. And when it comes to these sort of things, there's a variety of span of things that you can do within each in their particular capabilities. Whether it's very simply reaching out to your customers and saying, hey, is there anything you need from me? Is there anything I can do to you to make your financial situation better? Do you need deferred payments? Do you need me to decline, if you're a subscription-based product, do you need me to decline your upcoming payment? Do you need a discount? Do you need that particular product I was trying to upsell to you or cross-sell to you? Maybe I'll just provide it to you for free. There are a lot of things that you can just do for the community as a whole. There's a lot of things that you can offer for free, not just for companies that are already your customers, but also companies in your pipeline. And as a whole, you can also provide free products, whether through open source or free licensing, to companies that are, in very problematic sectors right now. For example, healthcare organizations, or struggling verticals such as the entertainment business or the travel business. So there's a wide variety span of things that companies using their individual capabilities can offer.
That seems spot on, and I think we've seen some examples of that. GitHub this week just announced that they were offering their GitHub Team Edition for free, and something that now is widely available on a kind of more macro basis. There are consortiums, alliances that are formed, like Rolls-Royce formed one around data sharing between companies in the aerospace industry to help with understanding economies around the world and how they're recovering and how that information can be used to help both companies and more socially. Apple and Google announced their cooperation around APIs and some standards for doing contact tracing, things like that. Those are kind of big announcements, but I'm sure what you're talking about just on a relational basis with your customers and potential customers is, now's not the time to close the deal, right? They're probably dealing with a lot of other things. So extend the trial, to 6 months, or offer part of the product for free. We'll worry about, a payment later or something like that.
Yeah, just be a human being. Generally, I'd say be a human being, but particularly now. And, on the other side of it, like you said, now is not the time to be salesy. And now, definitely not the time to use and abuse coronavirus as a sales pitch and cause all sorts of alarmist responses and approaches to your potential customers. That is literally, there's a blacklist going around of vendors that do this. You do not want to be on that blacklist. And even if there wasn't, you just don't want to be that sort of company. Don't put COVID-19 in your cold email approach. Try to reduce your cold email approaches as much as possible. And if you do it tactfully, intelligently, and with a lot of EQ. Nurture your existing relationships. Try to understand from your customers what are other corporate relationships do they have with other companies that are struggling from the same cybersecurity needs? Do they need a reference to that? Could they reference you to that? And try to reduce your email frequency and brevity when it comes to these things. Like have an occasional and sensitive ping to your existing customers or relationships, and just try to be very sensitive about all that.
I agree, and I think even some of the ways we were have been communicating, the way webinars are put together, things like that. I mean, folks who are working from home, under stay-at-home orders, yeah, there's a lot of interest in attending those things, but there's also a lot of interest in, getting a panel together to talk about a certain topic, hearing from different aspects of the industry, talking together, really kind of get some more deeper insights. I think people are looking for, help me not only stay current, but kind of help me be engaged, because sometimes it's hard when you have a rapid shift to working at home or some other situation like that.
For sure. And another rapid shift, CISOs are currently wrapping their heads around is not only, how do I operationally now move my team, which can be either dozens of people or even less? How do I operationally manage all this now from work at home? But primarily when you look at the corporate level, how do I now secure this remote workforce? Incredibly interesting. A lot of content written about that in the cybersecurity world, and companies that can intelligently make use cases using their existing technologies to secure a remote force will be able to come out of this strengthened. You mentioned a lot of webinars taking place right now, and actually Wild Ventures has one taking place next week. It's about how should cybersecurity startups actually engage with customers in the COVID-19 era. A lot of what we're talking about.
Pretty relevant.
We're going to host our CISO in residence, Sunil Yu, who I mentioned before, who used to be the chief security scientist in Bank of America, as well as the CISO of Upstart, and the information security officer of HPE. So it's going to be super interesting.
Very good. Well, fascinating research, and great that you're continuing to do this with the third edition. And hopefully we can stay up to date with each other as that progresses. I wish you the best, and your portfolio companies and the entrepreneurs that you're working with and helping along through this times and beyond. So thank you very much for talking today.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me, Mitch.
You bet. Thank you, Nama, with YL Ventures.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Okay, good stuff from Mitchell on Friday, huh? I don't know what your thoughts are around, are you more productive working from home? But we've heard a lot of people who are working really hard at home and maybe are more productive, and it has to make you think, do you need to go back to the office? Should we have big offices like that? Anyway, we're going to talk more about that in the weeks and days ahead. But for now, we're going to wrap up Friday, May 1st, episode 25 of TechStrong TV. Hey, if you've been watching us from the beginning, thanks very much. If you just joined in, in the past couple episodes, thanks for joining in as well. We'll be back Monday with some more fresh content and great shows. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel. Stay healthy, stay well, stay strong, TechStrong.